Has it ever happened to you that there's a song that you have listened to 100 times, but you still don't know the lyrics and cannot sing along? It happened to me with For What It's Worth by Buffalo Springfield. So I decided to look up the lyrics and memorize them once and for all. But when I tried to sing them, something didn't sound right. Now, including portions of a song in YouTube feels super risky, but let's try it. Listen to this clip.
There's a man with a gun over there, telling me I got to beware.
What did you hear? I heard, there's a man with a gun over there, telling me I've got to beware. Which is exactly what the official lyrics say. Except for this. Look, a telling and telling. At first I thought that the singer, Stephen Stills, was simply adding a random vowel here to fit the metric of the verse, but no, turns out that what he's doing here is called A-Prefixing. A-Prefixing is a feature of some dialects of English found all over the world, but is more prominent in the southern United States and in the Appalachian mountain range. It consists of adding a prefix a to the verb conjugated in present continuous, and once you know about it, you can see it everywhere. In Bob Dylan's The Times Are A-Changing,
Times they are a-changing.
In the movie Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? In this children's song, I Saw a Ship A-Sailing.
I saw a ship a-sailing on the sea.
Even in Australia's unofficial national anthem, Waltzing Matilda.
You'll come a-waltzing Matilda with me.
And in many other places. Now, all of these examples are songs, and there's a reason for that, but we'll come back to that at the end, because first we have to discuss what does A-prefixing even mean? I mean, what's the difference between the words telling and a-telling? You could take the lyrics of all these songs, remove the A-prefixing, and they would still mean the same thing, right? Well, no one is exactly sure what is the meaning of A-prefixing, but we are sure that it has a meaning. In fact, it probably has several meanings. One theory is that one of its uses is to tell stories, since two independent researchers found that around 66% of the time it was used when telling stories. There is also evidence that suggests it is used to indicate intensity. For example, in one research, they found that speakers prefer the phrase, "he was really a-staring at a picture," to the phrase, "he was only a-staring at the picture." But in my opinion, the best indication that A-prefixing is a well-formed grammatical feature is that you can use it incorrectly. For example, you can use verbs in present continuous as nouns, but you can't if you use A-prefixing. For example, he likes hunting is correct, but he likes a hunting is incorrect. And this doesn't mean that some old college professor sat down and invented those rules. No. They showed these sentences to people who naturally use this feature, and they asked them which one was correct. And they all agreed that this one was correct and this one was incorrect. Because that's what it means to speak a language. It means that you instinctively know many rules of how to use certain words, and you can tell when something is correct or incorrect, even if you are not really sure why. Another rule is that you cannot use A-prefixing as an adjective. The movie was charming is correct, but the movie was a-charming is incorrect. There are also some rules about how to use it with prepositions, but they are quite complex, so I don't want to get into them here. But isn't that amazing? Millions of people agreed on rules about how to use this feature, and no one taught them those rules, because until relatively recently, no one knew those rules. Not consciously, at least. They all learn those rules from examples, and that's how all languages work. That's how we all learn to speak. But If people use this feature in normal conversations, as plenty of studies have found, why are most of my examples songs? Why couldn't I go find a news anchor or a politician or a TV show that uses this? Come to think of it, why wasn't it written in the lyrics of For What It's Worth? The answer is very simple, but the connection is not obvious. Because the dialects we speak are deeply tied to our identities. Think of all the words young people use that older people don't understand. Remember when everyone was saying YOLO and swag? Remember how cringy it was when old people tried to use those words? That's because the words we use and how we use them tell a lot about who we are. Sadly, these examples are the most inoffensive ones, because the other ones relate to economic class. Basically, there are ways of speaking that we associate with being rich or being poor, or even worse, we associate them with prestige and vulgarity. Sadly, A-Prefixing is associated with having a lower class in society, and thus people, consciously or unconsciously, try to hide it when speaking with people from other socioeconomic classes. That's why you will never hear any news host using A-Prefixing. That's why you'll never see characters in TV using it, unless they are supposed to be poor or uneducated. That's why people don't use it in formal writing, and you'll never see it in newspapers, books, or scientific papers. Art, however, is special. Historically, people have used art to express themselves however they feel more comfortable, regardless of whether society sees as prestigious. That's why, in a time when Latin was the prestige language, My Cid was written in Spanish, Dante wrote the Divine Comedy in Italian, and Chaucer wrote the Canterbury Tales in English. And that's why all these artists unashamedly used A-Prefixing in their works. Because art doesn't care about the prejudices of society, it cares about truth and beauty. And yet, ironically, the people in charge of writing these lyrics did care and decided not to include A-Prefixing because they saw this Appalachian English as something slightly shameful or incorrect. Of course, the same happens with many other dialects. African American vernacular has also developed many interesting and complex features with their own grammatical rules, but I'm a bet you ain't gonna see it used in TV by them news hosts. But if people don't use their natural dialects in TV, books, newspapers, and everything considered serious, what do they use? Well, they use the standard dialect. The standard dialect is different in every language, and indeed in every country. The standard English used in the European Union is different from the standard English used in the United States. If you want to know exactly how they are different, I found a very interesting video about that, and I'm gonna leave you the link in the description. But for now, you are probably wondering, how is the standard dialect chosen? Easy, it is the dialect that the ruling class just happens to speak. In countries with monarchies, it used to be whatever language the king or queen spoke. That's why for centuries the official language of England was French, because it was conquered by William the Conqueror, who was from France. In republics and kingdoms where the king is not too powerful, the standard tends to be the dialect that just happens to be spoken in the capital. That's why Italy, when it formed, chose the dialect of Florence to be the official language, because at that point Florence was the capital. And when they conquered Rome from the Papal State, they changed capitals, and so they combined the dialect of Rome with the one from Florence, creating what we now know as Standard Italian. But that's not all of it. In extreme cases, the standard dialect might be outright invented to appease the higher classes, as it happened in Norway and Greece. In Greece, the aristocracy wanted to speak Ancient Greek because it was very prestigious. The problem was that Greek had changed quite a bit in the last 3,000 years, and most people now spoke Demotic Greek. So a guy named Adamantios Korais took Demotic Greek and changed it to be as close as possible to Ancient Greek, creating Katharevousa, literally the purifying language. Now, normally when someone invents a new language, no one cares nor bothers to learn it, but surprisingly in this case, it did stuck, and soon all the aristocracy was speaking it, in what is probably the most successful case of conlanging I've ever heard of. Of course, normal people hated Cazarebosa because it was hard to understand and they didn't have time to take classes, they were busy working and being poor. Thankfully, the pressure of the people eventually was enough to convince the government to officially adopt Demotic Greek and make government accessible to everyone. But there are still stubborn people who speak Cazarebosa and they want to bring it back or whatever. In Norway, when they got independence from Denmark, they had to choose their official language, and they could have just chosen the dialect of Norwegian spoken in Oslo, their capital. But the aristocracy would not be caught dead speaking the same dialect as the regular people, and so they commissioned the creation of a new dialect, which they called Bokmal, which was closer to Danish, because, Danish is so prestigious. Sadly, while they invented a way to write this new dialect, they forgot to invent a way to actually speak it, so while most people in Norway write in the same way, they can pronounce words very differently. But that's not all. Of course, another guy saw that this was wrong and decided to create another dialect, Nynorsk, this time combining all the dialects spoken in Norway by not prestigious people. As a result, Bokmal and Nynorsk combined, and most Norwegian people use elements of both dialects depending on the formality of the situation and where are they from. And keep in mind, I skipped over 2 other varieties of Norwegian invented at some point. Do you see all the trouble rich people go just to not speak the same way as poor people? Isn't this absurd? Aren't you at least a little bit angry? Do you remember when this video was about some cool feature of Appalachian English? I guess what I'm trying to say is that I hate when dialects are used to discriminate people. And I hate when we think that one way of speaking is superior or better or correct and all the others are inferior or vulgar or incorrect. Because it deeply hurts society in many different ways and it leaves wounds that are very difficult to heal. And yet, I admit that standard dialects are useful. They are necessary. Governments need them in order to function. But I just want to tell you, you who stayed until the end to hear me ramble about dialects and class, remember that all dialects are equal, because all people are equal. It just so happens that one has to be the standard, but if you or someone else doesn't speak the standard dialect, that doesn't make you nor them more prestigious nor more vulgar people. Those are just illusions created by society that we hope we can overcome. I hope you agree with me that we want to live in a world where there are no poor people dialects nor rich people dialects. And seeing as you found all this topic interesting enough to watch till the end, may I suggest you my video Biography of a Language? Here I explore how standard dialects are chosen and how they change over time in a fictional island of Celador. Thanks for watching.